And welcome everyone to another episode of the Mind Sculptors podcast, where we help you create a winning mindset. See what I did there? I'm your host, Callahan. Joining me today is my lovely co-host, best friend, even though he doesn't live here anymore. He's now one of those San Francisco douchebags.
I am a surfer, bro. It is true.
It's my good friend, Fenix. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Excited to talk about some Commander.
Yes. I am very excited to talk about this Commander. Although before we get into this week's topic, Commander, I do want to take a moment because first of all, there's two things a few things I need to talk about. First of all, you and I are going to be going to MagicCon Minneapolis. We are going to be driving there, which is really exciting. So look out for the Fenix and Cal vlog video.
There will be something.
Well, we're going to do something. We don't know what it will be, but we're going to do something. And then also don't forget that we are sponsored by Dragon Shield. Oops. Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the business. I actually really don't like Ultra Pro.
It was a weird slip.
It was a weird slip. I think it's because I watch so much content that I just like hear it. But we are brought to you by Dragon Shield. Dragon Shield sleeves are the best in the business. I personally use I have to have a matte sleeve box hanging around here somewhere. I have so many matte sleeves. These are petrol sleeves is what I meant, but these are the sleeves that I use. They are great. Been using them for almost a decade at this point, which is its own thing that I won't talk about. But if you want to support us, click the link. There will be a little link here in the YouTube video if you're watching there, or if you're on the podcast, there's a link down in the description. Also, if you want to support the show, make sure to go subscribe on patreon.com/Mind Sculptors. We haven't been doing a whole lot on Patreon recently, but as I kind of start to come out of what was a quarter-long depression, I am starting to get things back into a functioning, functioning order, so it were. And so if you want to do that, we'll be revamping, probably taking a look at some of the rewards there and seeing what things are going to do. But at minimum, it gets you access to our Discord server where you can talk to Fenix about spoilers all day long.
I do like talking about spoilers.
He does. I'm excited. I love talking about spoilers. But one other thing that I wanted to talk about is a deck that you and I brewed yesterday that I have goldfished so many times at this point, and I'm in love with it. And it's Titania Voice of Gaia Dredge. And I know this sounds really dumb. And it is kind of.
But
it works oddly well.
It turns out that you can take most dumb ideas and turn them into a functioning deck.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is so for what it was is Titania Voice of Gaia has been my casual deck that I've been playing for a while, and every time I play it, it just does something really, really dumb, and I'm like, there's got to be something here, right? So yesterday, Fenix and I spent a lot of time going through and is this worth it? Is this good? And then I just goldfished it a bunch, and it's just oh, turn 3 does the thing, cool, okay. So I'm going to leave a link to that deck list for people to check out because it's the dumbest bullshit that I've ever seen. I want people to play it and experience the bullshit for yourself because I can't do it justice without telling you, without you experiencing it, right? It's a thing that you have to feel one of my favorite things is the little loops that you could do with Multani and Gaia's Cradle, where you can just keep replaying your Gaia's Cradle and sacking your Multani and just keep going over and over and over and make a lot of mana. And it's a very fun deck. Highly recommend it. But that is not why what we're here to talk about today. What we're here to talk about today is Tivit, Teller of Secrets, and why it's winning fucking everything, apparently. It's not won giant tournaments outside of what was it, Mox Masters 3? The one that Ian won.
It's in October.
Yeah,
it was the one in October.
Yeah. So that Mox Masters event was Tivit won that. And at first you're like, okay, sure. And then over the weekend, it took down 2 more tournaments, one in Buffalo, one in California. The week before that, there was another tournament that it won. The week before that, it didn't win the week before that. It top 16'd Chaos Treasure. And then the week before that, it did something. And then the week before that, it did something. So it's consistently, at minimum, getting to top 16s and top 4, which is in itself bananas. It has a conversion rate on EDH Top 16's website of 29.27%. So effectively 30%. That's with decks that are above 40 entries. It's the only one with that conversion rate. It is bananas. And so what we wanted to do is figure out what is it about this deck that is making it win as much as it is, and then what can we take from that? Because we get it. Everybody probably doesn't want to play Tivit. It's very much a play style type of deck. In fact, I'm actually probably going to put it together because it feels like a deck that I would adore.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Ian has told me that he is like convinced that I would love the deck, and I probably will. I just don't own a Tivit. I own every other card for the goddamn deck. I just don't own a Tivit. So
just not a Tivit.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty sure I literally have one. So
well, I mean, they're like $1. So it's like I can just go up to Hobbytown and buy one, right? Like I just haven't. So
now I have to convince you why you need to fix that.
Yeah. So I'm honestly, the results are making me do that. So let's dig into this a little bit. So before we started, Jeremy kind of has this like theory on where this sort of like, I don't know, like theology.
It's my overarching opinion on the format.
Yeah.
Is a good way to put it.
And so explain to people about like the categories that you kind of see decks falling into generally.
So I don't know if I can actually assign it correct. Like there's always going to be stuff that's not going to fall into the norms, but the stuff that, at least in my opinion, and looking just a little bit at the data, is that the decks that win games usually fall into a couple categories, at least are consistently winning a top 16 and have a ton of entries in any tournament. The decks that win games are doing one of 3 things. And so they have card advantage in the command zone, they have a combo in the command zone, or they have mana advantage in the command zone. And usually those 3 different categories of decks end up leaning towards, well, I've got a commander combo, you think of like Najila or Malcolm, or I've got card advantage, so you think of Timna Kron, or you have
Timna Thrasios even.
Yeah, exactly. Or mana
Thrasios
advantage.
Brews. Yeah.
Mana advantage, like Malcolm Timna is a good example of a deck, or Malcolm Vile.
Yeah.
Any Rogrok deck.
I have effectively a basic land in my command zone. Let's go.
Pretty much. It's a lot better than basic land most of the time. So, but I feel like decks usually that like people generally fall into one of those 3 categories of like, these are the best decks, or like these are the types of strategies that you want to do. Whatever your win con ends up being.
Right. But when we were talking about it, where does Tivit fall?
Yes. So Tivit does do all of these things. So Tivit has a 1-card combo in the command zone with Time Sieve. It has card advantage in the command zone if you use it to draw clues. It has mana advantage in the command zone if you use it to create treasures. And then it keeps doing all those things after it comes out. And so it falls into all of those categories, and then it gets to play Esper, which is a pretty solid color combination. 3 colors is awesome, and then the main disadvantage it has against other decks is that it doesn't have five colors. If it was 5 colors, it would be even better. Spoilers.
Right. Well, yeah, honestly, you could probably say the biggest disadvantage it has is it doesn't have access to Tymna. Honestly, like of all the downs, yeah, you just don't have access to Tymna in the command zone, and that which is wild. But so when you look at those 3 things. So let's kind of look at like decks that kind of fall into that first category of the, commander combo, specifically decks, and what makes those successful and how that applies to something like Tivit, for example. Thinking of stuff like, we've talked about Malcolm already, and I feel like you're probably going to hear us bring up Malcolm a lot because
in all of these categories too, Malcolm is also a good card.
Yeah.
It turns out.
But so when we're talking about like these commander-centric combo decks, what are they? What are defining features of them, and what makes them successful apart from the other 2 categories?
Yeah, so historically, the one that you always think of is Najeela, because Najeela has 7 million 1-card combos in the command zone.
combo.
Yeah. Malcolm is obviously the one that you think of that's always very successful. And then you have a lot of these less specific, but so like Thrasios is kind of a combo. It's not a 1-card combo, but it's kind of a combo in the command zone. You have other stuff like Rocco, where tutoring is kind of your 1-card combo. Godo, maybe you can squint and it kind of fits in this category kind of thing.
Right.
The one big thing that I think of, at least for this category, that is different to the other categories is before we had Thassa's Oracle, these are all decks that are willing to play Consult without having Thassa's Oracle in the deck.
Right.
And so any deck that has a 1-card combo in the command zone is willing to already play Consult. And so that's where the colors of Tivit really come in being good.
Right. Because now you have multiple, you basically have multiple targets for your Forbidden Tutor, right?
Yep, exactly. And then because of the colors Tivit has, it also has access to its 1-card combo. You can tutor for it. And so like that's kind of where you get into the differences between like, so Najeela can always tutor for any of them. Different Malcolm variants, depending on the color combinations you have, you can or can't tutor for every win condition. And so you get a little bit of differences in there, depending on the color combination.
Right.
And Tivit's definitely has a strength with the colors that it has.
Right. One of the things that I think is interesting is we asked Ian. Ian is for some thoughts because he's been, kind of at the forefront of a lot of these Tivit things, or at least talking about it a lot. In our group chat, we asked, "Hey, Ian, have any strong opinions on Tivit?" And his exact words are, 1-card combo is good. Also, Esper card quality is good. Which
sunglasses emoji.
Yeah. So, like, Esper card quality, just kind of jumping off on that because you did bring that up, is what is it about Esper that makes it as good as it is, right? Like, because like the prevailing thought would be that, or the prevailing like philosophy is that Grixis is where you want to be. It's the best colors. What about Esper makes it more attractive than like a Grixis shell, for instance?
So Grixis is a lot faster than Esper is just as a color combination. And that's not to assign fast being better or worse. It just is faster. And the difference from white to red in those color combinations is really that white gives you a lot of flexibility, and you can play the game very slowly and still be successful with white, where red leans you a little bit more into being aggressive and that kind of storm of, like, you literally storm, where
Right.
you are trying to win on one turn or win all at once, and white gives you a little bit more incremental card quality advantage, where red doesn't necessarily have exactly that.
Okay. I've said this before. We've talked about this before with Xur. I remember we spoke about this, where people were trying to make Xur like this turbo deck, and I've spoke at length of, hey, you know, you think I don't think you're getting what the colors are doing, and so, like, let's jump off here for a second. The second category you had was the mana advantage decks. And so those are going to be stuff like
I think of Prosper, but that's because I'm very biased.
Prosper is not it does not fall into that category. Another card that
Malcolm is a good example.
Yeah, Malcolm's like the best example. I think another one that I would tend to think of, I don't even know. Karksakshima, yeah. Maybe Magda. Magda does that a little bit with the mana.
Yeah, it gets a little bit hand wavy because you're kind of trying to classify things that aren't the same together.
Right. Yeah,
it gets the point across.
But so, what are defining features of these, and how does this apply to Tivit, for instance?
Yeah, so I mean, decks like that ROG was the other example that I think I brought up earlier, where they let you go faster by having the mana advantage in the command zone, which in my opinion, in cEDH games, it's not about how fast you can win. It's about how fast you can take advantage of the opportunity you have to win. So if you can win very quickly, given the right situation, then that's exactly where you want to be.
This is an interesting thing. You and I have talked about this, and I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show, is this concept you have of what really...
It's win first, win second, is like what a lot of other people have brought it up as.
Well, specifically, the thing that you have said is the WinCon access, right? And when you look at the mana advantage, right? How does that play into the WinCon access, for instance?
Well, you can play more expensive tutor lines, for example. You can tutor chain, which is like a lot of these decks. Malcolm specifically is what I also think of, have one card combos with the Glenhorn, but you have mana gates that you have to hit to be able to combo. It's not, and Najeela is the exact same way, where you can't one card combo with Najeela until you are able to make all 5 colors. You can't one card combo with your Malcolm and Glinthorn until you get enough mana. You have to have the right colors, and all these things that are not necessarily restrictions to your combos or your one card. If you get enough tutors, you will be able to find a way to win. And if you have enough mana to use all those tutors, you definitely can win. And that's where the mana advantage comes in, where I only need to top deck one of my 20 tutors and I instantly win here. No matter what the mana situation is.
Yeah. It's very interesting because you think of the mana advantage aspect of Tivit is one of those things that every time I reread this card, it does something else stupid. It
could have had any amount of the things on there taken off of it. The vote twice could be taken off of it. It's still a great card.
Yeah, it's just very good. So you have that, and then the final kind of card category you have is the card advantage, which is your Tymna Croms. Your really honestly insert Tymna deck here. It is kind of those decks, and we've seen historically, Brian Koval's had a lot of success with Tymna Crom. What is it that makes those so successful in their like obviously card advantage is good, but specifically with that, how does having that access in the command zone differ from like, you know, I don't know, like any other 4-color option or 5-color option, right?
I mean, it's you can grind, you can wait for a game to be slowed down, and you can still play the game. And so that's where something like I would jump to like Rockside as an example, where like Rockside can grind, but it's not as good as doing it as the decks with card advantage. And so you just have to be able to take advantage of that, and it allows you to play a slower game plan or like a more higher card quality. Is the thing that I always think of. Because you have card advantage in the command zone, you expect to see more cards. You can play high quality cards that are just generically good, and you don't have to play stuff that is only good when you're winning or only good at making you win quickly.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting because you kind of think about stuff like I think of Zur when I think of a deck that kind of needs to play some stuff to really make it work. You know what I mean? You know, you look back at it in the past and it used to be like this boogeyman, and now you kind of see where it's at now. And you're like, oh, maybe it wasn't as crazy.
You pitch a lot of cards to try and get that Zur out very early.
Yeah. So when we take all of these things, because Tivit really does all of these things, and it does it honestly pretty well. Like, what is it that Tivit is doing in Esper that Malcolm isn't doing in Esper? Or that, you know, I just brought up Zur, that Zur isn't doing in Esper. Or, you know, there's several, I mean, hell, Marnius, Calgar is a deck in Esper that has some sort of it's a pseudo one card win.
It's a Scepter outlet.
It
kind of draws cards. Yeah.
I mean, Rafine is
Rafine's a great example.
Yeah. A really good example, right? Tevish is shy in these colors. So what is it that Tivit is doing that really kind of sets it apart from the rest of the field?
It's a 1-card win condition. that is it. That is like, so it is as simple as that. It is more nuanced than that, but it is as simple as that. It's a win condition. It does not necessarily that it is a 1-card win condition, but it's a win condition. A flying ward 3/6/6 flyer can win you games.
It's hard to get off the battlefield. It's wild.
Yeah. And then it generates incremental advantage. So even if you're not comboing with Tivit is still a win condition. If you land your Tivit, you are well placed to try and win that game. Versus a lot of those other decks, you land your commander and all you're doing is drawing more cards, and you still need to draw into your Thoracle Consult, or you're not going to win the game.
Yeah,
that's the big difference, at least to me.
Yeah, and so like, I think it's interesting because that seems more appealing to me than even a thing like Tim the Crom, right? I mean, where do you think it's positioned? Because clearly it's positioned pretty well. It's having probably one of the best success rates in cEDH right now. Like, I don't think there's another deck out there that is having nearly as much success as Tivit is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, the way that I like to pick commanders is I like them to do things when I play them, and Tivit absolutely does that. Tivit comes in and gives you a lot of resources, and then is access to a combo and gives you grind potential, all those things that we just talked about. And like, I actually do like Tivit more than Tim Necrom personally. But I like playing weird stuff anyways. So,
right. So what are, when we look at, like, for instance, other decks on the database, you've got like Evelyn, for instance. I hate Evelyn. Or you've got Inala. Like, are there Evelyn. Other options that kind of fall into this sort of category that you also see being like, you know, Tivit-esque? Because one deck that I see that it's kind of new, but it's still kind of getting its footing because it just came out, that I think has a lot of potential is the dog food chain with Kuranos, and Kroxa,
Mhm.
because it feels very similar, where it's got a lot of the same stuff going for it that it did not have, or that other decks don't have going for it, especially in those colors.
I mean, I'd be hard pressed. Definitely, the dog food chain is one that I think of immediately, where this has got a 1-card combo. It's generating card advantage. It doesn't necessarily. You could argue it generates mana advantage as well with reanimation.
Mm-hmm.
It's cards like that are what I'm looking out for. I think Rocco is another one that immediately comes to mind for me. That is this. I would be very surprised if the amount of people playing Rocco goes down, is the way I would put that. Like going forward, like as we get new cards in the format, I would be very surprised if we get less Rocco players.
Well, it's kind of that thing. The reason they banned like Pod in Modern, right, was it hamstrings what cards you can print because it just only gets better with time. Rocco is very much that card, right?
Yeah, that's a terrifying effect to have in the command zone. It's one that makes me think of that.
Now, let me ask you this, because one thing that I think is very interesting here is I think like Kroxa and Kuranos, I think his potential. I don't think it is. We're talking like, this is a college, fresh out of college prospect, just landed on the team, was really good at Duke, but we don't know exactly how they're going to be, but they have the potential to be really good. I'm not talking about Anthony Davis, except he played at, Kentucky. Not talking about Anthony Davis.
I'm not even help with the NBA references.
But so you've got this prospect in Kroxa and Kuranos that has a lot of potential. And what are things you can pull from Tivit that can help push that into it? And how does that set it apart from something? Well, let me ask you this. Let's time out before we even get there. What do you think? There's another card from this set that you could argue also, well, it's not even argue, it just does, as 1-card win condition with Hoff and it combos, and that's the
Shalai
and Halar. Thank you. I was trying to find it because I could not remember what the second one was.
I was like, which card are you talking about? Yeah,
I knew it wasn't Halana, but I knew it was Shalai. So I think Shalai and Halar also have a lot of potential. However, I think its ceiling is not nearly, it's not Rocco, and I don't think it's Tivit. Whereas I look at Kroxa and Kuranos, and I say, I'm evaluating this, and I go, I think it might be the next Tivit. I think it has that much potential. What is the difference between those two in your eyes that really sets it apart?
Yeah, so it's what we started out with. It's the amount of buckets that it ends up in. Mm-hmm. So you end up with, so even though like the Shalai and Halar has a 1-card combo, it doesn't have card advantage. It doesn't have, my brain just turned off. The other bucket that I
mana advantage.
Mana advantage.
It's all good.
And then you look at Kroxa and Kuranos, and you can squint, and it's technically mana advantage. If you're reanimating something, it's technically mana advantage.
Well,
if you're using the cards in your graveyard, that's technically card advantage. If those effects are powerful enough to actually make it good enough, or if you can even create the game state to do that, I don't know. But the effects are, at least you can squint and it reminds you of it, which is a good thing for the long-term prospects for the deck.
Right. Well, and I think like Kroxa and Kuranos, I opened one in my booster box. I was very excited because it was one of the cards that I was very excited to get. And it has it doesn't have the ward, which is sad. Because ward is one of the things I think that makes Tivit so kind of set apart. But it does have a lot of text on it, specifically Vigilance, Menace, and Lifelink.
Those are what 2 really good keywords and an evasive keyword. I mean, that's really good. It will be very easy to Naz in your deck with reanimation targets if you hit one time with this.
Right.
And then people can't attack you anymore, basically, on the ground.
It's enter the battlefield or attacks. So it's the same trigger as Tivit. And so that's kind of why I look at this. And I go, I think this has some Tivit potential to it. I think this has, I don't think it's going to be as good. I will say that.
It's not self-contained the same way that Tivit is. And then also you don't have blue. So,
well, and that's what I was going to say. Is
creating a long game is going to be difficult.
I think the hamstring there is the lack of blue, because you kind of run into this situation where, yes, you're going to play Demonic Consultation, so you can get to your, what's it called? The Altar of Dementia. However, you don't have that second DC target or Tainted Pact target. And that is kind of a huge deal, because setting that is one of the things that kind of pushes Tivit to the forefront, right? Is because Tivit's got this, I can either Tainted Pact or Demonic Consultation for either piece of the combo that I need.
Yep, exactly. And then you could freely use those as tutors too. And in this case, you're a little bit more scared. The consult is not quite as good, because you do end up needing to have at least a win condition left in your deck.
Yeah.
Where Tivit can actually still kill by just hitting your win condition. Right. With the time save and taking extra turns and hitting people.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting. I wonder. Now you have to exile cards from your graveyard. I was wondering if there's any way that you could play like a Titan and then like shuffle, or like one of the Eldrazi Titans and shuffle. But no, you really can't do any graveyard shenanigans.
It would be pretty complicated. Technically possible, but just not worth it kind of thing. To shuffle in your graveyard a bunch of times.
It'd be very interesting to see how that develops. Outside of that, what are your general thoughts on where the meta, because we've kind of covered all of our bases. We're at the half-hour points. Now we need to fill 30 minutes. So outside of that, this is just Cal.
So now the ramble o'clock.
This is Cal and Fenix talk shit. Podcast.
We made it through the talking points.
This is the podcast within a podcast. How do you feel about where the meta's at? Because like it is, we started making content after, but it was after Flash.
Or like right after Flash got
it was the fall like, after Flash.
Close. Okay.
But we really got more engaged with the online community around the Flash ban time. Not that we weren't involved before, but that was when we like got on Twitter, for instance. Where do you see the meta in, like, is it progressing in a way that you like? What do you think is the best strategies right now? Like, if you are going to whatever event, what is it that if you are trying to win that event, thinking of?
So it's the classic game theory situation where do you as a person going into a tournament want to play the thing that is generally accepted as the best thing, the thing that you know is best against the generally accepted best thing, or something completely off the wall? Mm-hmm. And like those are kind of your three main options that people usually fall into. And I think that we have a very solid, this is the best thing to be doing in the meta, which is ad nauseum. It just is. It's just a one-card win condition, basically, for almost free, because we already build our decks in the way that work well with ad nauseum, just because of how fast all the decks are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could argue the decks are fast because we want them to work with ad nauseum. Right? Like,
chicken and egg.
Yeah.
The non-ad naus decks are still fast. Like, if you think of something like Magda is a good example, where, I mean, Magda is presenting a turn 3 win on a average hand, which is very quick. But for like, any format.
But like, when you look at that, what are you wanting to take into a tournament? So there's tons of Tim the Chromes. There's tons of, like, let's look at those. There's right now Tim the Chrome, so top of the list, right? And then you got Najila, and then Bruce, Rogside Tivit, and then it drops off from there. So, like, thoughts.
What we call generic is just generic because it's what we see all the time. So, like, all these decks are NOS decks with access to 1 or 2 card combos, just with the colors that they have, the commanders they have, all that stuff. And then they do something in the command zone, whether it's card advantage or mana advantage, or a combination of both as partners. And so you can kind of expect most decks to be perfectly fine playing a mid-range game, but not necessarily set up to play a mid-range game. And so you can kind of, my personal opinion is that, like, everyone is coming into a tournament with stuff like Timnacrom and like Najeela and being like, I could play a mid-range game. This will be okay. So if you just out mid-range the crap out of them with like something like Thrasios Bruce is what I think of.
Yeah.
Or Tivit, then you are very well placed because you can play well against the entire field and you have a solid strategy against stacks as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to kind of look at all the different things. One of the things I got to say that I really appreciate, I'm just kind of looking through deck lists of people who, you know, are winning tournaments. I gotta say, give it out a big, good job to who is it? Alexander Rice, who won Mox Masters 20 in December, for the sole reason they are playing Bring to Light in their 99.
Love to see it.
Love to see it. I saw. I'm just like going through lists and I'm seeing all this, and I see Bring to Light in the 5-color deck, and I'm like, we got there. That's what we like to see. Tivit's one of those things that I think is really interesting because it was a card like when we went and did the new Capenna set review. Like, I don't even think we talked about it, and we did 2 set reviews for that set.
Did we?
We might.
I don't think we did. I remember putting it on the document, but I don't know if we.
I can tell you for sure. Let me pull that video up because I don't think we talked about it. It might have been on our sheet because like we always just throw a bunch of stuff.
We throw everything on there and then talk about whatever we want. But like just going back to the overall meta while you look that up, then I think the meta is generally a pendulum, and I make the joke that all decks are mid-range. But generally, the meta pendulums between fast decks and very heavy mid-range meta, in my experience. And I think that we are on the.
We did talk about Tivit. However, we did think that Oscar was the better card, which we were very wrong on.
Oscar's very silly, but. Not as a commander, really.
We were like, Oscar was going to be a really good commander, and it was just not.
We tried very hard to make that work. It didn't.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how like things evolve because I was watching like the Play to Win podcast from this past week, and when this comes out 2 episodes ago now, I guess. But they were kind of talking about cards they misevaluated throughout their like channel's history, and it's like you look at Ikoria and they're like, we didn't even talk about Winota, and it's like, yeah, I remember when Winota coming out and nobody
batted an eye. It was like, wow, this card's really dumb in Standard and Brawl.
Yeah. And then it did nothing in Standard. It did a lot in Brawl. But it's wild because how many of these cards are cards that we see and we go, oh, that's good. And, you know, it's all right, but maybe it's not as broken. I mean, how many hidden gems are out there potentially?
Oh,
right?
So many. I mean, you do have a little bit of limitation. Like, it's pretty easy to tell. I think Owl is a good example of, like, it's pretty easy to tell that, like, a card is doing something very powerful, but you don't know how good it is. Right. So Owl is one of the 2 effects on it is that it flips the top 7 and you put CMC up to 4 artifacts and creatures on the battlefield. And it's very obvious, wow, that's a really good effect. But also, I have to get a dies trigger, I have to pay 5 mana, like, is that worth it? And then it's very hard to just, like, say yes or no to something like that. Card evaluation is very hard, as shown by everyone always getting everything wrong.
Yeah.
And so like there are lots of these gems out there that you can look at an effect and be like, wow, that's really good. And then it's, can you make it work? Is really the question that it becomes. And I think there are a lot of those out there that somebody could figure out how to make it work that is better at figuring that out than I am.
Yeah, that's one of those things where sometimes I think Proxing Kyranos is one of those decks where I'm like, this clearly has something. I'm not going to be the one to figure it out because it's not my specialty of brewing like these combo decks, really. I'm too busy brewing mono green dredge, which again, I want to remind the audience, you should probably try it because it's fun. I also am of the opinion that let me ask you this, because this is one of the things I've been thinking about while we've been building Titania. Is the Gitrog Monster underplayed? Because it feels like it should be doing something strong right now, right? Because like Frog is, I still think there's something there. I'm wondering, is Gitrog Monster maybe being overlooked?
All I know is I haven't seen very many tournament entries with it. Whether that's good or bad for the deck, I don't know. But
hold on, I
don't know if that's because people have moved on from the deck, or I know that the Gitrog server is very active still, but I don't know if it's just people not participating.
There are 7 entries on EDH top 16.
That's not very many, especially compared to a lot of the other decks. I mean, yeah. So it's still being played, but it's not being played very much.
It's not. The results those have had have been not good. I mean, I look at Gitrog and I see a lot of potential with it, just from the fact of from my own brewing in mono green, where I'm like, maybe we're looking at this from the wrong angle, right? Like maybe we're looking at Frog from the wrong angle.
It's very likely, and then like even generally the general meta of like Ad Naus, like I even said it earlier, Ad Naus is the best card. Well, am I actually right, or is that just tribal knowledge that we have, or like the way that we've historically built decks? And it's hard to answer those questions.
It is. It's so hard for me to look at, I've been doing all of this really wild stuff with a mono green deck that plays on a very similar access to Gitrog Monster, and then Gitrog gets access to black, and then suddenly it's not good. I feel like Gitrog just needs some love. Does that make sense?
It needs a fresh opinion.
Fresh opinion.
New eyes. Any deck can use new eyes.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where, like I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, it looks about the same as it always has, but like, is this really the best thing? ? And I'm not saying that. If you're a Gitrog person, I know our YouTube channel has a great history with Gitrog players. Nothing controversial has ever happened on this channel with Gitrog.
Tell us why the current version of Gitrog is the best it's ever been, or why it isn't.
Yeah,
I don't know the answer to that. So
yeah, I mean, my thought on it is I think there's like, so one of the things I really like about the way that we built the Titania deck, and obviously it's not like perfectly tuned, and it's kind of a meme of a deck, but there are some things that you can pull from it, right? And like one of the things that I think in there is, okay, so like maybe Multani is better than we think it is. Maybe World Breaker's better than we think it is, because those are cards that do a lot of the
like
things,
casual staples.
Yeah, that we kind of, they're doing things that we kind of want to be doing anyway, and then also put something into our hand that gives us the ability to advance our game or answer a question, right? it's just one of those things where I'm like, I might be totally off base, right? I have no idea, but it's just one of those things from play testing it in green. I look at, okay, well, how much better is it in black, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you have to look at the advantages of the color and what they can do to create the game state that you want to be in.
Mm-hmm. What are you playing right now, Fenix?
What am I playing?
Yeah, what are your what is your deck of choice right now? Evelyn.
It's Evelyn. Yeah.
Even over web.
I'm trying to figure out if I want to play the battle in Evelyn.
Which battle?
The 5 mana search your library graveyard for
Arcavios. Battle for Arcavios.
Instant sorcery, yeah. Because you can use it to tutor for Displacer Kitten, and then Displacer Kitten, and then make infinite mana. And then once you've made infinite mana, Evelyn wins the game.
Oh my gosh.
That's pretty much it. And then you're already playing Kitten, and you're already playing all the cards that would tutor for Kitten. Because you just grab an Entomb, and then you're...
Right.
Yeah. Or whatever the specific setup needs to be.
I really hate that deck with a passion.
I had 7 different exile piles on the Team Turn 3 stream last weekend as of recording.
You know, I'm sure you did, and I'm sure it was great.
I was happy about it. I'm sure no one else was.
Oh man, it's interesting to talk and just kind of like shoot the breeze, I guess, to some extent, because we blew through everything.
That's what you get when you don't have 2 people on. You only have 1 person, so there's no arguing.
There's no arguing. No, we don't have a Morgan here to go. Well, you know.
I wish Morgan could have made it. That would have been fun. I don't think I've ever actually podcasted with Morgan.
I don't know.
Maybe. I don't think I have.
You might have. I know you've done it with Pongo.
We've streamed plenty, but
right. What do you think about Tivit, Teller of Secrets, Kyranos, and Kroxa? All those decks that we brought up. Leave us a comment down in the description. You can also talk to us directly about your opinions on our opinions by following us on Twitter. You can follow Fenix at, what is it? It's at Fenix.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. It'll be in the links for you in the description.
Yeah, look at our link tree in the description. I'm at Callahan is here. You can also follow at Sculpty Boys on Twitter to get all of your Mind Sculptors update. What did we think about the little phrase I had at the beginning? Creating a winning mindset. I thought that was a really good tagline, good tag for the show.
Try and brand us now.
A winning mindset. Well, you know, we're the Mind Sculptors. Well, before I used to do like my mental breakdown, and the whole thing was it was like me breaking down my thoughts on things, you know, but also me kind of going crazy. And so I wanted something, but if you have
need to make a sculpting reference of some kind,
a sculpting,
yeah,
the winning mindset, sculpting a winning mindset, sculpting a winning mindset.
If you have a good sculpting pun, hit me with it in the comments.
Yeah, send it to us in the comments. You could tweet it at us at Callahan is here at Sculpty Boys. Also, if you want to get the Najeela, could be a Najeela card merch, make sure to go to www.themindsculptors.com/shop. You can pick that up there, as well as your Mind Sculptors hoodie, all that good stuff. If you want to support us, get into our Discord server, talk to us directly in there. You can head on over to patreon.com/themindsculptors, and you can support us on there and get access to our Discord server, as well as some of our backlog content that is available to patrons as well. Also, just another reminder, we are sponsored by Dragon Shield, not Ultra Pro. Dragon Shield. Don't buy Ultra Pro. Ultra Pro is bad. Wizards are probably going to hate me for this, but I don't care. Dragon Shields are good stuff. They sent me these forest green sleeves. I tend to use the petrol sleeves, but I will say this: I do have Titania Voice of Gaia sleeved up in their green dual mats. And these are cool. The dual mats are really nice. I know that they shuffle really well. I'm a big fan of them. And then all of that jazz. So make sure to go click on our affiliate link, support us down there. Am I missing anything? Did I gloss over
I don't think
any of our stuff?
I think you successfully got your way through the outro.
I also forgot about this. I'm not gonna edit this because I think this is hilarious. Also just want to make sure that I'm giving a special shout out to some of our top tier patrons, because you are who keep the lights on around here. I don't know why I'm talking like Captain Kirk, but I'm giving, or John Wayne or whatever. I'm talking like it's a 60s television show. Probably because I'm watching Marvelous Miss Maisel right now.
That would be why, yeah.
Very good show. But do want to give a shout out to our top tier patrons: Adam Hamden, David Snavely, Elif Cruz, Matt Boehner, Michael LeVine, and Senior Coupon. Like I said earlier, if you want to support the show, get access to our Discord server, head on over to patreon.com/The Mind Sculptors, or you could just click the link in the description. With all that being said, thank you for joining us, and from all of us here at The Mind Sculptors, I'm Callahan, and we'll see you next time.
아직 아물지도 못한 상처 속에 의미를 찾고 있는 날